It's great to be a princess at Disney World, but it's not so great to have princess feet. Today we're talking about how we get through all those miles at Disney with minimal pain.
Welcome to Always Planning Disney, where planning is half the fun. I'm Melissa.
And I'm Cheryl.
On this channel, we talk through all of the details that go into making our vacations magical. So, a pain-free trip.
Is that even possible?
It used to be, I think. I will say during our last trip, and because I had a lot of complaints about it, we got, or at least I got, I'm not going to bring my family into this with me, but I got a little sore, especially after the Universal days. We shoved 2 Universal days into our Disney trip, and there's just a lot of walking in between all these places. And it was 7 days, full speed ahead, no break whatsoever. And I walk a lot, but my daily range goes from 7 to 14,000 steps per day. And I've heard that Disney World, you tend to average 20,000, and that's every day. So, that's big. That's a lot of steps.
And I think we were actually closer to 30,000, maybe even more than that on our average Disney days. Granted, we were going back to the hotel sometimes midday. So just like going in and out of the parks, in and out of the hotel, that's going to add up to be a lot more steps. But I think that 20,000 is on the lower side if you're, I don't know, doing any amount of zigzagging to make reservations or anything else. So I don't get in quite as many steps as you in my day-to-day, but we did build in as much walking as we could in those weeks leading up to our trip, when we were maybe 6 weeks out and I started panicking because it was January in Minnesota. It was really cold and icy and snowy here. So like we hadn't been outside a lot. We hadn't been taking a walk every day. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, we're going to be in terrible pain if we don't do something about this. So we did sort of build in some training walks leading up to our trip that helped a little bit. But I have feet that need a lot of support, and I have skin that will blister if you look at it wrong in the Florida heat and humidity. So I know a lot about being in pain from walking at Disney.
So let's start by talking about those blisters. In my experience, going when it's a little bit colder in January and February means that we're always wearing socks and closed-toe shoes, pretty comfortable shoes. And I haven't really had any issues with blisters. I had a small one once, but I just slapped a Band-Aid on it real quick when we were in the park, and that was it. I didn't have to worry about it again. So let me hear about your pain.
Let me tell you my pain. So I completely destroyed my feet on our 2015 trip. It was awful. I had to go to first aid to get some blister supplies because I ran out of regular Band-Aids and I had so many going at once. It was terrible. So I was in rough shape the rest of the trip, where I would constantly have to stop and fix my Band-Aids because they're coming off in the humidity, all of that. I was not about to let that happen again in our 2020 trip. So I came in prepared for blisters. So my first step was figuring out what socks I could wear that wouldn't slip down under the heel of my shoes. That's a problem I have really frequently. I don't know if everyone does, but the shape of my feet, that heel is always slipping down, and that can cause just enough space to rub and get a nasty blister. So I tried a few highly recommended brands of socks at home, and the winner for me was called Balega. It's a running sock brand. So it's meant for people who are running marathons, and I thought if they can run a marathon in this sock, it'll probably be okay for walking around Disney. And I not only got this higher quality sock, I brought along enough pairs on our trip that I could switch into a dry pair midday when we came back for naps, because I had heard that could be helpful for people just to wick away even more moisture. I didn't wind up finding that necessary, but I felt more comfortable knowing that that was an option if I needed it. Okay, the next step was I had a full kit of supplies, not a first aid kit, a blister prevention and care kit along with me. And I had a big kit in my suitcase, and I had a smaller version of it in my park bag so that I would have everything in the parks if I needed it. So here's what it had in the kit. And I'm going to put this either in the comments, or I'll have a link to a document in the comments or something if other people are in this situation that I was in. So I had a friction block stick, which I know you can get at running stores. I think Band-Aid brand makes a version of it. It's basically like a gliding thing that will prevent friction. So if you find that you're getting a hot spot that may turn into a blister, you can put this friction stick on it and that'll help get rid of the friction between your skin and your shoe or whatever it may be, and hopefully prevent it from going any further. So I had that with me all the time. I had those little moleskin donuts that are advertised to use for corns to put over a blister if it did form. That's something that I had used on my previous trip so that you have a little padding and then hopefully the blister won't pop. And then I had a whole bunch of different bandages in the hopes that something would stay on my feet if I needed them to, instead of having to pull over every hour or so to replace it. So I had the H-shaped Band-Aids because those can like form pretty well. I had Johnson & Johnson Tough Pads that are really, really sticky in the hopes that they would stay on. I had clear waterproof Nextcare bandages. So all different things because it was winter in Minnesota where I was coming from. So I couldn't really test anything out to know if it was going to work in the Florida heat and humidity. So I brought a bunch of stuff that I had seen recommended. And then I also brought Tegaderm bandages, and those were for if a blister breaks. I didn't wind up using them, but that was another thing that I had seen recommended. And so I picked some up because I thought, well, why not? I might need it. So I came so prepared with my whole kit. I didn't end up having to use any of it because the socks alone wound up being enough that I didn't have a single blister this trip. And that was a big improvement over 2015.
That's amazing. I always buy new socks because I have the same slippage problem that you have. And even if it's not down long enough to cause an issue, having to stop and pull socks up is a horrible way to spend any day, especially a day in Disney. So new socks, definitely. And I'm looking forward to trying the brand that you recommend.
They are pricey, but I'm still using the same socks that I had on my early 2020 trip. So they've lasted almost 2 years now and they still look great. And I'm planning on getting some more of them to build up my collection.
Awesome. So I didn't have as much of a problem with blisters as you have had in the past, but I did have a lot of problem with just general pain from the walking. And it was specifically lower back pain and even a little bit in the hips and general muscle soreness, but it was really the lower back pain that was getting to me. And I had realized that on this trip, I had worn through all of the great like walking insole of my Pumas, and they were on their second Disney trip. I went to them because I said, oh, these are shoes, they're broken in. I know that they're comfortable, but the problem is I had worn them too much over the years and they got pretty flat inside. And that was probably the cause of my lower back pain. So you definitely need shoes that are broken in and comfortable, but not ones that you have worn straight through, which was an error on my part. I did try putting inserts in them at home when we returned, but those ended up making they were too high for the shoe itself. And once my foot was lifted up that high, it was a different type of uncomfortable and would definitely lead to blisters. So next time before my trip, I will check to see how much life is left in my broken in shoes. And if there's not a lot, I'll probably splurge for a new pair and spend some time breaking them in prior to the Disney trip. It's a lot of miles and you'll wear through a shoe fast.
Yeah, and I did have some good shoes for our last trip, and we'll talk about shoes in just a little bit here. So I didn't have any foot or leg pain this trip, and I think I had on the previous trip. That kind of took a back seat to the whole blister thing, but I think I was hurting a little bit there. What I did have this last trip was some terrible hip pain, and that's been a new problem for me since pregnancy. So I would be awake at night because I was hurting so bad, even though I was obviously very tired from a day at Disney. So that was really frustrating. So I've been working on making my hips a little happier through a fitness program, and I'm hoping that'll put me in better shape next trip. And I've also discovered that magnesium cream is magical and can solve a lot of problems. So I will be bringing that with me on my next trip as well.
That is a really good recommendation. And I did not even know there was magnesium cream. I have taken chewable magnesium to help with leg cramps and pain before, and it worked really well for that. Although it is it is a supplement that you want to check how much you can handle, because there are some digestive side effects with magnesium that are worth being aware of, but it is great for leg pain. And I'm excited that there's a cream. I didn't even know that.
It's supposed to be better absorbed through the skin anyway, and then you can just localize it wherever you're hurting. So it's great for something like a Disney trip where you get back to your room at the end of the day, you know exactly what hurts, and so you can just focus it on that instead of taking like a painkiller that's gonna, you know, go wherever in your body.
Yep. And I did take some Motrin on this trip, especially after the Universal days when I was feeling it, because I wanted to be able to sleep and I wanted to be good for Disney on the days that follow. And so I will definitely take a cream over any sort of like oral medicine.
Also a rest day. We haven't said that in a few episodes, but rest day next trip, because I think we were texting on our 2020 trips about how much pain we were in, and we said we got to have a rest day next time because we need to recover from all this walking.
Yep. So kind of related to foot issues, but not a sort of pain at all. Well, at least not for my daughter, but it was a pain for the rest of us. We had a foot smell issue on this last trip that hit us the very first day we were there, and we came in the room and we're getting ready to go to bed and we kick off our shoes and we were hit with a horrible, it wasn't even like stinky foot smell. There were notes of like vinegar in it. It was insane. And once we figured out that it was my daughter's feet, we used a little Lysol spray in her shoes. When I fly, I have a routine of sort of cleaning my row that I share with the kids. And one of the steps of that is a Lysol spray, because they make ones that are small enough to take on a plane. And I still had some of that left, and we actually ordered more for this trip, so we knew we would make it through. So I Lysoled her shoes at the end of each day, and we left them outside for a while. She had to clean her feet every day. Dirty socks were put in a plastic bag, like tightly sealed inside of our dirty laundry. Since then, we have discovered a wonderful whole body natural deodorant. I don't even know how you pronounce it, if it's Lume or Lume, but I'll look that up, and we can also link that as part of this episode, that works on feet. So it's a lotion, and when you put it on, you actually get a few days out of it. So that's going to be something we definitely bring with us on our next trip, because the nightly foot routine was a lot to get through.
Especially when you're tired.
I know. Oh, she's probably going to be angry at me for discussing her stinky feet publicly, but it was an unexpected twist on that trip.
And it's relevant. I remember my sister having a similar problem when we were growing up.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I guess I don't want to do a thorough foot routine before I go to bed at Disney. And so that's one of my main reasons for refusing to wear sandals in the theme parks. I find that my feet get really dirty. And I also worry about like cracking a toenail or something when my toes are exposed and you have all those people and you could stub it on whatever. So I don't feel safe wearing sandals in a theme park, so I refuse. But I do bring my Birkenstocks along for the hotel, and I find that that's a nice kind of break for my feet if I'm just running down to the food court or to the pool or something like that. That's really nice. So I do bring sandals along. I just do not wear them into the parks.
I also do not wear sandals in the parks. However, I know that one day I probably will if we go when it's warmer, or if Splash Mountain is ever open when we're there. Although we usually will have just cheap flip-flops in a bag if we're going to go on something that might get us wet and just switch in and out. But in terms of sandals for walking or handling Disney, I know I'll need them at one point. I'm terrified of choosing because sandals can get very uncomfortable very quickly. And I live for warm weather and sandals and being barefoot all the time. And they even irritate my feet. So I'm terrified of picking these sandals out. I will at one point. I've tried looking at recommendations and I'm overwhelmed. I'm also glad to hear that you have an issue with your feet getting dirty. I'm the same way. In the summer, I wash my feet frequently just to get the dirt off of them. So I stick to closed-toed shoes at Disney. And I have heard good things about Cloud Foam, and I think I'm going to try a pair for the next trip.
I've tried a lot of the shoes that I've seen recommended for travel because I frequently will start going down a Google rabbit hole to figure out like what is going to solve all of my problems. So I've tried Crocs makes like a ballet flat that I had seen was supposed to be pretty comfortable and then you could wear it with cute outfits, right? That's the thing that destroyed my feet with blisters because I cannot do that rubber. That was a terrible idea. I've tried the Converse slip-ons, which are supposed to be comfortable because they're lightweight. Same thing with the Skechers Go Walk, and none of them have really been great for me, even when I added my own arch support, because I have got to have arch support. I can't do these flat sneaker things. Like, that's not an option for me. So I did the thing that you aren't supposed to do, and I bought a pair of Brooks sneakers right before my trip. And I only wore them for like maybe 2 days before we left for Disney. That's supposed to be a bad idea, but they were perfect. They were absolutely perfect. And they knocked my other shoes. I had also brought along some Skechers Go Walk, and I didn't even want to wear those. So next trip, I think I'm going to bring 2 pairs of Brooks sneakers to alternate between. And I'm not going to bother with any other less expensive shoe because it was so nice and I didn't experience any pain. They weren't too heavy with all that walking, which I think is oftentimes a concern for like a more substantial sneaker. So that's what I'm planning on next trip. I would really love to be able to wear like skirts or dresses and do cute Disney bound outfits in the parks, but I don't like how that looks with like a running sneaker. And Brooks is definitely a running sneaker vibe as opposed to like a cute sneaker vibe. So I think I'm just gonna have to give up on that particular dream in favor of a much more comfortable Disney trip.
And I wouldn't want to wear a cute outfit and bring a pair of shoes only to capture a couple moments, in pictures, because then you have to carry those shoes around with you. And I really like to be streamlined in terms of what I bring with me to Florida in the first place. And also it makes it into the park bag. So I agree with you that I don't think I'd be able to pull off any outfit that wouldn't go with my sneakers, but I will be looking for a pair that could be a little bit cuter because I haven't had too many problems with any of the shoes that I've worn to Disney. Some were a little bit more irritating than others, but I am definitely going to do the 2-pair trick next time so I can alternate between them. And I'm going to have one that looks a little bit cuter just in case I get inspired to also Disney bound. I don't know though, because that's a lot of time in planning and wearing something that maybe not be as functional in the parks. And especially when it comes to feet, I want to be super functional for that Disney trip. I don't want to mess anything up by having pain or a foot problem.
All right, thanks so much for tuning in. Let us know in the comments how you keep your feet happy and pain-free at Disney, and let us know if you have any sandal recommendations for Melissa. And remember to like and subscribe to plan along with us.